Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into College Playground. I'm your host, Sydney Simone. I am joined with Keely. We go back to high school. I was going to say middle school. But I think we met in high school. We played basketball and track in Gurnee, Illinois. If you guys remember, I spoke about it on the show a couple of times. That's where I really started I started before then, but that's when I really started getting into sports. And so we connected through basketball. But thank you so much for joining me. She ran track and she threw discus at Marquette. So thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me, Sydney. I'm excited to be here. I'm so glad you're doing so well, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's jump right in. Wow, I'm trying to think of where to start. So let's go back to Warren Township, where we met. We played again, like I said, we played basketball my freshman and sophomore year, and then I transferred. So that's how we met. Talk about how you got involved with. We're gonna start with basketball, and then we'll circle back to track. But how did you even get started playing basketball?
I actually started playing with my guy friend neighbors, and we were just shooting some hoops and stuff. And my dad's like, "Well, you need to start a sport some way, somehow." So I started the feeder program. I think it was fifth grade, and I warmed the bench. I was so bad, and I think my first basket I ever got was at the opponent's basket. So,
Girl, don't, oh my gosh, I
um,
have the same story. I was the same way.
it was horrible.
I started in fourth grade and I rode the bench and I think I scored the wrong one. They were like, wrong basket. I was like, yeah.
It was just good to be a part of a team, and I think that that's what really got me interested is the love and support from all my teammates and everything, despite me shooting against the hoop. And then I was working really hard and actually maybe I should practice, maybe I should see a private coach or something. So then sixth, seventh, eighth, I went to Viking.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really fun. I think I got co MVP with Michaela Schultz, if you remember
Yeah,
her.
yeah.
That was awesome. And then high school came around and I tried to tackle, volleyball, basketball, and track.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for quite some years. I did that all the way up till senior year, I think. And then I just focused on track, and I did powerlifting full time. I did competitions and everything, and I really wanted to excel and I wanted to work hard in the gym. And I didn't really think that, doing cardio for basketball was the same strength training as I would,
Right.
put towards track. And I really, really liked track in the fact that I only relied on myself. I think that, I found out that I was really good at lifting, and I was like, maybe if I push myself harder in the gym, maybe I can, score farther. Maybe I can, egg some of my teammates on and get them, excited to throw. Um, and I remember too in high school, I think, we were talking about, what people think about track in general. And I remember in high school, it was like day one of track, and I went to throws coach, and I was like, I want to throw. This is what I like. I didn't want to even try sprinting. I sprinted in middle school, and that was not for me. So I started doing track, and I started doing throwing, and I really got into it. It was just kind of like practice during tryouts. But the thing that the head coach was saying, and I think that instills in the minds of everyone else, is oh, for those who either don't try hard or, just maybe aren't as athletic, you can't run, you can't sprint, go do throws. So automatically it was like, putting us at oh, if you can't sprint, go throw. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like, if you can't throw, go sprint. It wasn't anything like that. So I think it kind of put us at a lesser advantage, and we kind of just all collectively supported one another. We knew it was a community rather than, just a team.
I and I wish I won't say I don't live with regrets, but I do wish I kind of went back to throwing because I actually throwed in middle school. We actually went to our middle schools are like rivalries per se. I
Yeah.
went to Woodland, she went to Viking, but I threw in middle school, and then when I got to Warren, I switched back over to track and field, which I wasn't bad at running. 100 4x1, that was cool. But I think because of my strength, much like you, I was lifting and things like that. I probably would have been a little bit more successful there. So let's talk about you mentioned it a moment ago, like if you can't run per se, y'all, she's very athletic, she can run, but you went to throwing, and talk about why you didn't really see that as a disadvantage, and why you did. I read your college history and things like that, why you went on and stuck with it, and then why it can be just as successful as running.
Yeah, so I think in the beginning, like, throwing isn't like a last chance thing. Throwing is its own sport, and if you work hard, if you do well, I'm not relying on other, relay members. I'm relying on myself and competing with only myself. If my other teams end up doing well, sometimes it eggs me on, and it's just a loud uproar at a meet. And that is the most fantastic thing. Then you see the sprinters coming over and they're like, oh my God, what is all this energy over here? And we're just cheering on each other. It is the most fantastic thing. Um, and I think that the reason why I stuck with throwing as opposed to basketball, for say, I mean, Marquette did give me a fantastic scholarship in itself, and it offered me the athletic too. I mean, the academic as well. But it's the community, like I was saying. It's, I'm relying on myself. However, we're all supporting each other. The friendships, however, are a little bit harder to come by. You have basketball where everything is teamwork, everything is relying on each other. You have team building activities, as opposed to throwing, where sometimes, if you're going to California, you're flying out to Florida and they're only taking 6 members, 3 guys, 3 girls.
Yeah.
You're competing against your friends. And now instead, you feel bad. It's
Right.
a different dynamic. And that was kind of hard to come by, which, I really did appreciate that with basketball opposed to track. But in the end, I think, track really worked out for me. And I really hope that other people, just give it a try.
Right. And I had that similar experience in terms of basketball. So I moved to Maryville, Indiana, which, to put it into perspective for people, Gurney is like north suburbs of Chicago. Maryville's like it's in Indiana, but it's like the south part of Chicago. That's just the best way to explain it if you're not familiar with that area. But I transferred there, and I was trying to explain it to my mom because she didn't understand. She's like, "You still play basketball there?" And like we had a really successful sophomore year, and then I became friends with the people on the basketball team, and we just gelled. So basketball, like you just said, doesn't really translate over to just go join somebody else's team and try to fit in. So I let it go after that. I didn't play anymore. And I just focused on track for that reason, because it was more individual based. And I'm like, okay, I can fit in a little bit more here versus trying to fit in with someone else's team. So, for those who don't really understand athletics in that way, you build those relationships and it's like night and day. But let's get into how you got to Marquette. So when did you realize, okay, I'm good at this. I can go all the way. I can go to college. Or was that ever your intent? Did you think I was done after high school? Did you ever have intentions of pursuing a college career in throwing?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. My family, so my brother went to a community college and everything, and my family was like, I don't want to have to pay all those big university, all that money. So they actually wanted me to go to CLC. They said, you're going to go to CLC unless you come back with a scholarship. I can't afford Marquette and everything at this time. And so I mean, I didn't go through any recruiters, and we can get into conversation about that, but I don't think that they're necessary. You're the best critique for yourself and you're the best advocate for yourself. So what you need to do is you need to, put your numbers up, make sure you can, still hit those numbers, not like they're past tense. And then just put yourself out there. I contacted people in Florida. I contacted, people in California. I contacted in Indiana. But the people that I really actually fell in love with and worked best for, coming home to was at Marquette, which is in Wisconsin. Um, and I think that, just talking to the coach and, being the one to, go to these events and go to these, in high school, they have, those, where all of the,
The,
high schoolers
yeah, yeah,
come
yeah,
and they have
yeah.
like little competitions and everything and practices and stuff and just scouting events. That's what
Oh, I
they
know
are.
what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah. We had
Yeah,
those.
scouting events. I
Okay.
think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
get yourself involved in that. You don't need a recruiter to advocate for yourself. If you say, "Hey, I saw you at the scouting event, are you interested?" I think that's the biggest thing too. But I came back from talking with Marquette, and he actually gave me a really great scholarship. I put it right on the table to my parents, and I said, "This is where I'm going." I talked with the team. I spent a whole weekend there, and we did like practices, and they kind of showed me the ropes of going to all the classes, and how small knit community is at Marquette. I mean, it's in the heart of Milwaukee, and it was fantastic to be there. I was, Gurnee isn't really a big
Right,
city, so it
right.
was awesome to see that without having to go to Chicago where everything is
Mhm.
huge. Um, so I guess that's kind of how I got started with Marquette, and it went from there.
So yeah, I know most people like typically on the high school level at least, they wait to be recruited or for somebody to come talk to them per se versus maybe college, when you're looking to go pro, you start sending out tapes and things like that. And they do that in football, but um did you always have that confidence in yourself to where you were just like, hey, I'm going to make a way whether or not somebody's watching me per se?
Yeah. Actually, so I had a lot of D3, D2 colleges reach out to me, but I think the thing that I wanted most was going to a D1 school. I wanted to really challenge myself. Part of being a great athlete is, getting those big conferences too, is going against those other great athletes. I wanted to push myself to the max. Not saying that, D1, D2, D2, D3 don't have fantastic athletes, but I wanted to be in those big conferences, those big schools.
Mhm.
Um, I think, the D2, D3, they sent me all these letters, and I talked with them how I had to be the one to reach out to the D1 schools that, hey, this is my name. Come take a look at me at this meet that's coming up. So they would come to this meet. And I think that's the biggest thing is advocating for yourself. Tell them where they need to be. And so that they're more interested in you. Being part of being a great athlete is also being confident.
I was just going to say, you've always had that confidence, literally since high school. You've always had that confidence.
As do
Probably one
you.
of the most confident people on our team. And I know same experience here. I think I maybe got one offer. It was like D3 in Oberlin, Ohio, and I was like, I am not going there. So I just I threw sports away after high school. I'm like, okay, this is where it ends. I knew I was somewhat good at track, but not good, and at least I felt like I wasn't good enough to compete on that level. But also at the other half of it was like it is a D1 school and trying to walk on there. I do wish I kind of pushed a little bit harder when it comes to
Yeah.
like scholarships and stuff, because that is so important. And I know you touched on it a little bit, but the importance of just using athletics and athleticism to get you where you want to be. Now, talking about scholarships, recently they had the NIL deals. So that wasn't really around per se when you were in school. How
Mm.
do you feel about that? Do you think like it's good for athletes? Like, is it
So
putting them at a disadvantage or?
I didn't really know too much about it and everything, so I had to do a little bit of research. So it's name, image, and likeness of an
Yeah,
athlete.
yeah.
I To me, I feel like that's, putting favoritism a little bit at the forefront again. I think that, these athletes work so hard in both, school, you make sure that you get your A's, you get your B's, make sure you're, academically set for these bigger schools too. And then you work on your athletics. But now I have to work on my likeliness or likeness from other people.
Mm.
Is that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah. So
what
yeah,
the
like
gist of this
basically,
is?
yeah, they're like pretty much
And
just
then based off of yeah, based off of your likeness, then you get more money. Uh,
yeah, so
I don't
like
know
I
if I could
guess
work with that.
basically popularity and like I guess well I won't say just popularity because they are good at what they do as well, but like these brands are paying them, some of them thousands, some of them hundreds of dollars to promote their brand. And just for me per se, I'm down here in Baton Rouge, so LSU they won last year for women's basketball, and that was a big deal. And a lot of the girls there have NIL deals, but now the top two players, Angel Reese and Flau'jae Johnson, are making millions of dollars, which is more than what professional WNBA players make. So I know the conversation a lot of people have is just, will it take away from the game? Will, in terms of recruiting, a lot of players going to school specifically for the recruiting. And, I think it's great that they can make that money, but it's always pros and cons to everything, and showing favoritism, especially in a sport like track and field, where per se the sport is already overlooked in a way. We got the big three: the basketball, football, and baseball. At least in the United States, those are like the big three. I think more recently, track has brought have more eyes on it, but
Yes.
in terms of speaking of that, in terms of feeling overlooked, do you feel like track is like a sport that is like the underdog sport per se, or
Yeah, I definitely think that it can be looked at as the underdog. Especially, I mean, especially throwers, and
Mhm,
when you look at track and field, you don't really think about throwers in general.
mhm,
We're there at the meet at 8 a.m. and the sprinters end up getting there at about noon. So,
mhm.
we have to be there to support ourselves. We're already done by the time they come on. And so now we're there to support them. But I think the big thing is, like I said, at the conferences, when we're getting loud, when the energy's at its highest, people then
Mhm.
are watching us. And I think that that's we end up scoring a lot of points, and then we have trophies to show. The Marquette
Right.
women's track and field and men's track and field ended up getting first in the Big East. I think the women's got 2019 and 2020,
Mhm.
and the men's just recently got it in like 2021. We have trophies to show, we have titles to show, I have rings to show. I think, unless another sport is, also preaching the same game, we shouldn't be the underdogs. We shouldn't be, looked at as anything less than a equal sport.
I actually most recently, oh, I'm gonna mess up his name. It's either Niles or Nolan. The guy who runs on the USA team, he just ran, and then there's a thrower. She just broke both guy, the girl
Yes.
and the guy. She's a thrower, and he runs. I think he was on the 4x1 and maybe 4x4, but they both just won national titles on the USA team. And
Hmm.
I think his comments went viral about, basically what you just said. You guys are bringing home the trophies, the awards, but all these other sports are getting the light and the popularity when you guys are working just as hard and bringing home just as many accomplishments.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, people are breaking world records here. That
Right.
that lady just broke the
Yeah.
shot put world record.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And
talking. Yeah, yeah.
yes, and the publicity isn't as much as, let's
Hmm.
say WNBA even,
Right,
like the WNBA doesn't get as much credit as, other men's sports. And now the
right.
women in track and field really aren't getting that publicity either.
Hmm. I think up
So,
until recently, I think the last biggest uh story was like once Sha'Carri Richardson started making headlines, I think that brought a little bit more eyes on track. And then this was a really good year for USA track and field as a whole. So I think that kind of brought more eyes back on it. But I have a question for you. So would you do anything per se differently looking back, or do you feel like you made the right decision to do one go with shot put and disc, or do you feel like okay, maybe I should have? 'Cause I know you mentioned volleyball as well. So do you feel like this was the right sport for me? I made the right decision. My process, I like the way I went about it, or would you do anything differently?
I think I chose the right sport. I think, as much fun as we had in basketball and volleyball and all of that back in high school, I think that track was the one for me. And I ended up falling in love with it. I ended up throwing discus and shot as well as weight throw and hammer, and I ended up breaking the weight
Hmm.
throw school record. And I'm top three in the hammer throw and discus. The thing that I think is I was a little too hard on myself. When you have a hard meet, or like, a meet where you're blaming the wind, you're blaming the weather and everything. Well, everyone's going through that. And I
Hmm.
think that I should have been a little bit less hard on myself and thought more positively throughout the experience, because college went by in a blink of an eye. And I would have hoped to stop and smell the roses a little bit more.
Oh wow.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm like I'd sit there, I reminisce too much sometimes. I'm like, man, okay, high school came and went, college came and went. It's like, dang, it's
Yeah.
just adulthood now. that's
Yes.
that's what this is life.
But you're doing big things. It's
Thank you.
fantastic.
So
Yeah.
how was that transitioning from college now into adulthood? You're in the medical field, a nurse, correct?
Yes. Yep.
So, how has that been? Just the transition from athletics majority of your life to now having a career. Was that tough or was it smooth? How did that go over?
Well, I think the biggest thing was, you're not weightlifting as much and everything. So now you're
Oh
like,
my
I
gosh!
gotta,
Yes,
I have to control something a little bit
yes.
more in my life. I think the thing that the athletics taught me in college going on to life, I did miss it a lot. And I thought that I was losing something, like a part of my purpose. It would
Mm.
involve
Oh,
so much of my life back in college. And now I'm like, I don't know what to do. Now I'm going to school, and I was in pre-med for a little bit. And then I ended up switching to my master's in nursing. Um, but I ended up finding a calling there. And I think the thing that also it taught me was, you're not relying on anybody else, and I need to do my work in order to get far in my life. So I'm working at, the surgical ICU, and I'm planning on, going into anesthesiology school,
Oh,
and applying this winter. So I'm hoping that, with my, drive and my intrinsic motivation, I'm hoping that that will, propel me to be more successful in life.
wow. And you're beautiful. And she's married, y'all. She is gorgeous, by the way. But yeah, show the ring. Yes, yes. I'm looking for, oh, love it. Love it. Yeah, I think, oh, well, let me ask you this. How was the transition during COVID? How was that? Like, was that tough?
Yes, it was very tough. I was so COVID hit when I was out of college and everything.
Mhm.
Not really during, I know that it hit a lot of people's fifth year, the same age as me. I think
Yeah.
it hit Autumn
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
hard too, because
Mhm.
she redshirted. But I was out, the last year, and I remember that the people right behind me where I'm like, you're gonna do big things your senior year. Now they have to redshirt. And I mean that just it's a lack of competition. You're still working really hard, and you might, lift a little bit heavier, but that's a whole nother year of, not it's not the same practice that you usually would. So it puts you in a different realm. And I think that's super hard for those athletes. And thank God I was not part of that.
Yeah.
But I feel for those athletes losing that year. And some people can't even go on for another year. They don't have the credits that they need. A lot of people, their season end right there.
Did you end up working like in the hospitals or anything during that time, or was that
Yes.
delayed or anything for you?
No, I was just finishing up school for that, and then starting in the ICU during COVID was very hard. And I think for those nurses that graduated, and they didn't teach you COVID in school, they knew nothing about it,
Right,
and so now
right.
you're thrown in, and you're learning about all these things that really you never learned about, and so now you have to adapt and accommodate. But I think that's kind of the willpower of nurses nowadays. And
Yeah.
anybody, essential workers in general, you had to, accommodate to what was going on.
Did that make you like second guess at any point, like, oof, maybe I chose the wrong thing, or nah, not really?
Yes, just with how just overall depressing it was. Family wasn't able to come in a lot of times, and you had to be the person that tied everything together with the patient and the family. You had to be that person that can connect them in some way. Um, Yeah, I don't know. I think that I never second guessed what I was doing, and I knew that whatever I was doing was helping those people, but you definitely had to take a step back and really assess your mental health and emotional health.
Ooh, yeah, that's heavy.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a tough time for everyone. But on a lighter note, what songs, what artists got you in the zone for any sport for whenever you had a meet, a game, a matchup? What songs were you listening to? What was on your playlist?
I was a big Kanye fan, and I
Okay.
remember Life of Pablo came out. I was
Yeah.
listening to highlights, the Wolves, Waves. I was listening to all of that stuff. That was my hype man.
Man, I say all the time, old Kanye was, yeah.
He was the best Kanye.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. I guess that was my hype music. Yeah.
Okay. Kanye was any top five Kanye songs. Ooh, I know I just put you on the spot.
I like Life of Pablo. I
Okay.
think
Or top out.
Heartless, going back to Heartless, I
Okay.
think that's a good song. I also listened to Drake a little bit back then.
Mm.
And I mean, I love Cardi B.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was my girl too back then.
In
Yes.
college or high school?
I'd say in college.
College.
Now, I mean, I'm married to a guy who's a little bit more country, so I'm a little bit more influenced with the country now.
I'm not
But
gonna
I would
lie,
say
since I've been in the South, yeah, I've gotten into it too.
you too.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
man, going from up like Midwest coming down south. It was I remember when I started in Texarkana, Texas, which is right on the border of Arkansas, because I worked in
Oh,
Shreveport.
yeah.
And it was like a culture shock. But you know how like something so different that is like uniquely fun. Cause I've never
Yes.
and like just going to trail rides and people riding horses and just, drinking moonshine out and just very chillax, just Like just a
Living
different,
your best life.
yeah, versus
That is
like up there's more, I feel like a little bit faster pace, you know.
Yes, absolutely. No, I would, it's definitely been like more of a culture shock. I knew a little bit, but I
Mhm.
think, rap and hip hop was where I was at middle school, high school,
Yeah.
college.
Man,
Yes.
that music back then was, yeah, what
Hmm.
a time to be alive. Well,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for chatting with me. I appreciate you
Yes.
coming on. I'm going to continue to follow your journey, and I'm so happy and proud of you. And I really appreciate you connecting with me again. And I wish you the best on your journey.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I will continue to follow you and see everything that you do. You're making big boss moves.
Thank you so much.
Yes. All
Okay.
right. Bye, Sydney.
Bye.